On today's episode of Where'd You Go?, I will give you a summary of my experience in the historic country of Italy. This episode will feature a visit to the Roman Colosseum and archaeological ruins, gazing at the Leaning Tower of Pisa, climbing to the top of Castel San Angelo, wandering through what's left of the city of Pompeii, navigating along the watery streets of Venice, and marveling at the landmarks of Rome like the Trevi Fountain, Pantheon, and expansive Roman Catholic churches. And of course, avoiding tourist traps and sharing the great stories along the way. Hello and welcome back to the Where'd You Go show. My name is Hunter. This is episode 2 starting right now. Man, I cannot believe how many countries we've been to. We've been to 3 already. We started in Italy. We went to Vienna, Austria. Now we're in Prague, which is in the Czech Republic. Now, if you saw the introduction video, there was footage from all over Italy. So there's a lot that was left on the plate that we didn't get to see. But I'm going to talk about the things that we actually did see and the experiences that we had along the way. First, I do want to share a story at the expense of my wife. She was in the shower and we were getting ready to go out for the night. And she calls me from the shower. She says, "Hunter, you need to come here quick." And I'm like, okay, well, what's going on? I pop my head in there and poor thing, she chipped her tooth trying to open her new conditioner that she was trying to use. So we're trying to figure out, well, what are we going to do? It's 7 o'clock at night, and there's no dentist that's going to be open that night. But, you know, you got to take care of that thing right away. I mean, no beautiful woman wants to go around a beautiful city with a chipped tooth. It just doesn't happen. So we're sitting there like, well, I mean, it might as well try. I started Googling English-speaking dentists in Rome. And sure enough, the first one that comes up, I'm like, okay, I got to give this person a call. Let's just see if they're open for some reason. The lady answers, and sure enough, she answers and speaks great English, thank God. And I say, hey, like, my wife chipped her tooth. We're trying to get it fixed. What's the earliest you can get her in? And to my surprise, I'm thinking like, a couple days, a week or so. Normally in America, you're like, yeah, you got to wait for a couple of weeks for an opening. But she says, yeah, what time can you come tonight? And we're like, are you even open? Like, I don't understand. And she goes, yeah, I have to go back to the office and get you in. And I'm like, man, that is crazy. So she's going to go back to the office and take us in right then and there at 7 o'clock at night. Okay, yeah, let's get it done. We'd like to get it done sooner rather than later so we can go out and travel and see all the cool stuff. So she says, yeah, give me about, an hour. I got to drive back to the office and open up and get everything ready. And like, okay, yeah, totally understand. We hop in an Uber. It just takes a while to get there. And we get to the place and it's actually in an apartment building, which is super weird. So I had to press the buzzer, wait for her to come and answer the buzzer. She buzzes us in. And I think at this point it's about 8 or 8:30 at night. She takes us in, and then we go over some paperwork, and we start filling out some stuff. And this lady is hilarious. Like, she's very energetic, and she was getting on me for filling out paper wrong. And she's just barking orders at me, and I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. But yeah, very, very energetic lady. And man, I was just very thankful for her to get us in. So I got a really good taste of how European culture is. It's not so like fast paced like we are in America. They're very, on the ball, trying to get you in and out, trying to get as many patients as possible. This lady was taking her time, and you know, it's just a different culture. There's nothing wrong with it. But she was preparing everything, and then she was showing us pictures of all the different things that she's done as far as fixing chipped teeth. And we were sitting there like, okay, like we've been looking at pictures for an hour now, like we're ready to go. And finally, like I think she's about ready to get started. And then she's like, "Do you want some coffee?" I'm like, "Sure." I'm like, "It's kind of late at night to have coffee." And she's like, "Oh, no, you need some Italian coffee." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'll take a cup of coffee." So it takes her a while to make the coffee. She comes back. We're both sitting down, and my wife's in the dentist chair, and we're both sitting and drinking coffee with the dentist. And I think it took about 2 hours until she actually got started. So as she was operating, I thought it was going to take like maybe an hour. She's got her like Andrea Bocelli music playing in the background. She's just sitting there like doing this thing, like being a conductor, and it was really funny. I'm just sitting there just watching the maestro go to work, like going to work on her mouth with the teeth and fixing her tooth. So I got a front row experience, and we were just sitting there like, man, how late is it? And I'm looking at my phone, and she didn't get done until 2 a.m. in the morning. So we're sitting there in the office, and then finally she's done, and we were just exhausted, absolutely drained. And finally we paid her, got out of there, thanked her, and man, it made for an incredible story. And poor thing, she had to go through all of that. She didn't complain. She had to get a shot in her mouth, and she got her tooth fixed and was ready to go that night. I couldn't believe that happened. We went through all of that, and God bless that lady. So if you ever chip your tooth in Rome, we know somebody that will fix it right then and there. That doesn't happen in America. Nobody's going to go back to their office and take somebody in last minute, especially to a foreigner. So we really appreciate that because we know that would never happen in America. So yeah, there's one of our fun stories. Now we're going to talk about even fun stuff, the stuff that you probably care about, Italy, the country of Italy. So the very first thing I'm going to talk about is the Roman Colosseum. Now, the Roman Colosseum is something I've been wanting to see my entire life. Ever since learning about it in history classes, I'm like, man, that's insane. That's where they have had so many gladiator battles. They've had hunts. They've had animal hunts in there. They've also had like reenactments of naval battles, which I don't understand how they did that in the Colosseum. Do they like pump in a bunch of water or like start firing cannons at each other? But yeah, crazy stuff has happened in the Colosseum. So we got to go, and we bought tickets. So that actually gets you into the Colosseum. And then there's actually another part. There's an archaeological ruin site of the Roman Forum, and this is like kind of like the town hall of Rome at the day. But anyway, the Colosseum, it seated 65,000 people, and I'm kind of looking at it like, doesn't seem like it would seat 65,000 people, but that's like a football stadium. That's probably like Cardinal Stadium or something. But it's crazy to think that they built something that far back in time without the technology and without all the manpower that they had to put that together. And it took them, I think, roughly 11 years to get it completed, which kind of seems fast for not having all the cranes and the technology that we have. So 11 years. It started 69 AD. It was finished in 80 AD. And there were two different emperors during that time. I can't remember the first guy, but his son Titus finished the Roman Colosseum for him. There, you can also see there's an arch outside of the Colosseum. It's the Arch of Titus. That one's a very famous landmark that people like to go and visit. But yeah, the ticket gets you to two sites. You get into the Colosseum, and man, it's amazing. You're just looking around at all the architecture, just marveling at everything. And it's basically just a museum now. So you have the outer circle part where most people are just walking around. And then you have to go up these stairs, and up in the stairs, kind of like, your second level in a stadium. And they have pieces that fell off from different parts of the Colosseum that they've preserved. all the stone, all the carvings, all the different things that, all the artifacts that they found after excavating a lot of this stuff. And what's really crazy is that underneath the base, the floor of the Colosseum, there's a tunnel system that they had. And in this tunnel system, they would have pulleys that would bring up the animals or the gladiators that were fighting. And you get to see all the intricate tunnels that are exposed that because they fell apart. And that's really interesting to me. I didn't know that they had underground tunnels like that. But it's just so intricate. Like it's something that's ancient, and you can't fathom that people back then had something that complex. So that was a really fun experience, and you get to go throughout the whole thing. You go up the top, you go on the bottom, and if you wanted to go in the tunnels, I think you have to have a special ticket for that. That's completely different. But you can go throughout the tunnels. You get a little hard hat. That's a special ticket though, so it's available if you wanted to do it. I think it was about 20 euros a person for the Colosseum and the Roman Forum archaeological site. Man, it was unreal just getting to see a huge part of history. When you think of Italy or ancient Rome, you think the Colosseum. So that was a fantastic experience. And then after the Colosseum, we went over to the Roman Forum. That's where all the archaeological site is. They used to have this giant temple, and it's all been dilapidated. It's completely ruined. There's still some pillars that are standing very tall that you can see and go visit, which is fascinating. So that's something that you still can go see. But I walked like the entire thing, and I must have walked, I think about like 10 miles or so. My goal was just to see the entire landscape of it. And man, I was exhausted. There's just so much to see on the grounds there. So I would encourage you, if you ever went there, go explore, go walk around the entire thing. And then if you go up to the top, there's some stairs, and you get this incredible view of the city. You can see all the steeples, all the churches, everything in Rome. It's a fantastic view. And then you got a bird's eye view of the Roman Forum. And that's where you can see all the statues that are still standing and all the columns. It's a fantastic view. I was blown away. You just walk up the stairs and you're just like, oh my God, like I can see everything. So yeah, I would highly encourage you to get tickets for both. And it's a very fun experience. Now I'm going to share with you some very helpful, some helpful tips on how to avoid some tourist traps. It's easier said than done. I know I fell for a lot of them, so I'm going to share them with you. At a lot of these landmarks, they'll have people that are trying to engage you in a conversation, what it seems like it. They'll stop you and say, hey, cool shirt, or they'll try to relate to you, hey, you're from America, you're American, and they'll trap you in this conversation. I just keep walking. You need to keep walking, because I'm too nice. I'll stop and talk to these people, and then they slap a bracelet on your wrist, like, hey, I make these bracelets. You need to help me feed my family. And, they'll demand that you pay them, a couple euros or so, or they won't say an amount. They're just like, oh, you got some money for me and my family. I'm like, of course, there's always a catch. So me being the sucker I am, like, oh, hey, here's a couple euros. Thanks for the bracelet. And what they do is they just try to guilt you into paying them money for the bracelet, and the bracelet you didn't even want, didn't even need. My rule of thumb is if someone's approaching you and they're trying to engage you in something, they're trying to sell you something. And the product is not worth it. It's not worth your time. It's not good quality, and it's probably not worth the price. And not only are people trying to hustle on the street, like with selfie sticks or mobile chargers, there's all sorts of things that they're trying to get you to buy, and they'll shove them in your face, selfie stick. I'm like, nah, man, the best thing to do is just straight up ignore them. It's not being rude. They're just trying to hustle, make some money. I get it, but you have no interest, so just keep walking. There's also people that wear these they could be red or green jackets. They're probably trying to get you to buy some tour package, get on a bus and tour around the city. Those are probably never worth it. Again, if you stick to that rule of thumb, if they're going out of their way to sell you something, they're probably desperate. So just keep walking. Don't engage them. They're going to try to stop you and trap you in a conversation. Just keep going on with your plan. Unless you're into that kind of stuff and you're willing to spend that money, go for it. But to be honest, again, they're going to try to do that to you. So that's a good helpful tip to try to be aware of. And then we're going to talk about the Leaning Tower of Pisa as well. That's another thing that we got to visit. To be honest, I don't know if it was worth the trip to Pisa. The Leaning Tower itself is super cool. I think it's cool enough to say, oh yeah, I got to see it. I've always been fascinated by it. Why is it leaning and how is it leaning like that? It's just cool architecture. But there's really not much to do outside of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. When you get there, it's kind of cool. It's like it almost looks like it's in like a castle wall. You go through these arches, through the gate. There's like lots of shops outside. There's lots of like food places that people eat at. There's a cool little street that has a bunch of shops. But yeah, looking at the Leaning Tower is like, oh, hey, that's pretty neat. And they also have like some churches and some like little library by it. But we got to lay in the grass and relax. The Leaning Tower itself is very impressive. And if you plan a whole day trip around it, I think it's worth it. But to be honest, it was more of a thing. It's like, oh, cool. All right, let's move on. So I would more or less like save your day trips for like a city that you can do a lot. Because we stayed in Rome, so lots of other places that we wanted to go to were a couple hours of train ride away. Pisa, I think, was a 3-hour train ride. And I think we probably would have rather gone to Florence. Florence is another awesome city in Italy. And that's where they have the Michelangelo statue. And that's where Leonardo da Vinci, that's where his home was, where he made all his inventions and stuff. So if I had to go back in time and change it, I probably would just skip the Leaning Tower. But at the same time, I think it was cool that I got to actually see it. So it's up to you if you'd rather make that journey or not. To me, it maybe wasn't that worth it. But if it's along the way, if you're stopping somewhere, I say go for it. Now, another tourist trap I want to help you avoid is eating in places that are directly across from landmarks. Don't do it. They are super expensive. And again, if you stick to that rule of thumb, don't bother talking to people that are going out of their way if they're trying to sell you something. This applies to food places as well. When you're walking around the Colosseum or the Leaning Tower, there's lots of waiters that are standing outside and they're looking to like kind of grab you and grab your attention. You're like, hey, come and eat. And, we did that a couple of times, and the prices were very expensive, and the food wasn't even that great. You might get lucky, and the food would be pretty good, but honestly, nowhere near worth the cost. So I would say just keep moving. I would honestly walk about 5 or 10 minutes away from the landmark. And that way, you can avoid those tourist traps. They're just going to overprice you. Go somewhere that's more reasonable, and the food's probably going to be better. So yeah, don't go right by a landmark. What else did we do? We did a lot. We went to Pompeii. That's another thing I had to cross off my bucket list. Ever since I learned about Pompeii in high school, I think we learned it about high school. I might have learned it when I was homeschooled. We did a lot of cool things when I was homeschooled. But learning about Pompeii and seeing documentaries about it, and it was unreal. It was a couple hours train ride from Rome. So a funny story on how I got there. So we took a train from Rome all the way to Pompeii. And then along the way, we had a transfer in Naples. So Pompeii is like right next to Naples. Naples is another big city in Italy. We had a transfer. So after we transferred, we're kind of getting close to Pompeii. And then we get stopped and we get pulled off the train. And it's like, We are not in Pompeii yet. We were about maybe halfway from Naples to the very end, and the lady goes, "Oh, you have to go on a bus all the way to Pompeii." So I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, whatever." So we all follow everybody. We get on the bus, and Naples is crazy. The streets are super narrow, so there's only one way this way and one way the other way coming back this way. But we're in this giant bus going down cobblestone streets, and it's just rickety. Like, we're just rumbling around town. They're trying to squeeze through, making right-hand turns. There's motorcycles, there's scooters just zooming by, and like, man, how do people do this? And the streets are absolutely crowded. So it's just kind of funny as we're riding down, like being jolted around. It took like an extra hour to get there unnecessarily. And I don't know why they never got an explanation why they stopped us on the train and had to take a bus. But the funny thing is the bus takes us almost to the end. And we had one more stop with the train. And we got taken right to the entrance of the Pompeii exhibit. Why did the bus just drop us off at the end? But oh well, I guess it makes for a funny story. But Pompeii, the grounds of the archaeological ruins, is so expansive. Not expensive, expansive. There's just so much to it. And seeing what was covered by the ash, and you can see that Mount Vesuvius is in the background. You can see the culprit, and it's almost creepy that you can imagine what it was like to go through what they went through. The volcano erupts, and then you can just see it in the distance. I'm sure there was just ash everywhere, lava coming down the mountainside, and a lot of people got trapped. They just couldn't escape. When I was reading about Pompeii and what happened with Mount Vesuvius, is there was kind of there was there was actually two different eruptions. There was one earlier one where it just kind of spit ash everywhere, and it lasted for about maybe 18 hours. So it was almost more or less like a warning sign of what was to come. So some people got out of there, some people stayed. I'm sure people had no idea what was going on. And then the second eruption happened. That's when it blew up. There's magma coming out. It's raining fire. I couldn't imagine what it was like in that time. So what happened is the whole city pretty much got engulfed in the ash and covered and just stayed there for hundreds of years. And I believe the eruption actually took place in 79 AD. That was actually the same, pretty much right around when the Roman Colosseum was getting finished built. So lots of happening in Italy right then and there. But anyway, I can't remember how long ago, but they had excavations. They're digging up the sites. They're removing all the ash. Almost everything is really well preserved. There's lots of buildings that are crumbled and caved in, but there's lots that just have roofs still. They managed to preserve everything. There's still paintings on the walls, and you would think that the ash would have just burnt everything up. But the streets are still intact. There's still huge cobblestone roads. Signs are still intact. Their amphitheaters, their Colosseum that they had there in the city of Pompeii, everything is still intact. So it makes for a great archaeological site to go tour. You can easily get lost there, and we were wandering around just going through every corridor, trying to see everything that we can see. What's really cool is they have lots of signs that are telling you what buildings were. It could have been housing for important people or politicians. And then they show you the exact areas, like the bathhouses. This was the kitchen. They show you all the pots that they excavated, all sorts of things, even some wooden carts that horses were pulling. And the creepiest part is they actually had on display casts of the bodies that were found. And I thought they were the actual bodies. We're looking at these bodies like, oh my God, they're dead bodies right in front of us. But what I turned out is like a lot of the bodies were actually deteriorating. A lot of the flesh, a lot of muscle, A lot of it was kind of gone, but it left a hollow cast in the ash. And some of the bones were still there. They had a display, and I think these were actually real, a display of skulls just sitting in a case. And I'm like, that's kind of crazy. Like, that took a lot of guts to just put a pile of skulls there. Like, that's kind of cool. But anyway, the bodies that they had, they were just cast of what they did. So they just put all the mold in, all the empty shells, and just made a cast of it. They even had a cast of a horse sitting on display in the museum. But yeah, the grounds there, you can just walk around. You can go throughout the housing that used to be on display. And then you kind of wind your way up to the top. There's a top level. And there's this giant statue. There are a couple of statues. There's a guy on a horse. And then there's one guy with like a trident. And he's kind of looking out on the sea. And then there's temples up there. There's different auditoriums that they used to have. Some of the pillars are still up. It's really fun to go explore. And I mentioned earlier they kind of have like a little mini Colosseum that they had. There's so many cool things to see there. And you can get lost. They have like vineyards. They have like tombs. They have gravestones. They have pretty much everything. So highly worth it to go to the archaeological site. Again, it's only a couple hours of train ride from Rome if you're staying in Rome. I highly recommend going to Pompeii. That was one of the funnest things that we've done. Another place that we went to Venice. Venice is another place. I'm just crossing off all these things on my bucket list. Venice, the streets are water. That's super cool. Like, where in the world does that happen? Only in Venice. So Venice is way far north in Italy. It's pretty close to Milan, and it's close to the border of Austria. So this train ride, it took about 4 hours to get there. We made a day trip out of it, so we got there maybe around 12 o'clock. And getting there, I always wondered, what it was. Is it like an island? What is Venice? So it's kind of like they built a city on top of like the sediment. So the water there near the coast, the river kind of brings out all the sediment, and it was enough to where they could put poles in the ground and kind of keep everything up. So it's kind of already built there with ancient technology. With more modern technology, they've built upon it and put cement and a nice foundation, and everything there is still up, of course, and they still have problems with flooding. Lots of different issues that they have. But it's kind of a marvel that it's still there, and everything is very like you can navigate pretty easily. You can walk around on the sidewalks. You don't have to take a boat everywhere. They got sidewalks free and bridges to cross. But getting there, the train goes across this land bridge, and you can actually drive there, which is kind of crazy. You can drive to the station, and then once you get off, you walk out down these steps, and the first view is just like this giant building with, it almost looks like a church. I think it was a church probably. And you can just see the river, and there's people just walking everywhere, and it's just packed. Huge tourist destination, obviously. But getting to walk around there, it's like a maze, just like Pompeii. You can easily get lost. We had no clue where we were walking. We just kept going. Wanted to keep exploring. There's lots of cool shops that you can go eat at outside, grab a coffee, grab a panini, a sandwich. And that's exactly what we did. Just planted it up outside of the cafe and just got to people watch and look at all the cool buildings. So Venice was very fascinating. Highly recommend that you do a day trip. Really wanted to do a gondola ride, but they were quite expensive. They were about 80 euros a person. So that's something that was kind of disappointing. I'm like, man, it would be really cool to do a gondola ride, but when you're doing a very long trip, you got to save some money. So just so you know, if you go, they're 80 euros a person. So Venice was super cool. Got to see lots of cool stuff. The Colosseum, Venice, Pompeii, Pisa. And there's also something that you might not know about, and I never knew that it existed. Is something called Castel San Angelo. this is something that you can see when you're driving, like you're on a bus or you're walking around like, oh, look at that cool thing. What is it? You're not really sure what it is. Castel San Angelo is actually really cool. It's more of a commemorative building for King Hadrian that he built himself and his family. So it's kind of arrogant and a little self-centered, but it's kind of cool though, because it houses his tomb and him and his family there. And there's a little room in the castle that you can kind of see his casket. I'm not sure if his actual body is in there or not, but I think he was turned into ash and probably buried somewhere. But they have a casket that you can go look at. But King Hadrian's tomb, Castel San Angelo, is really cool. And it was very cheap. I think it was only like 12 euros a person. I highly recommend it. So you take this little bridge across, and they got these cool statues of like angels and saints. Really cool. There's lots of artists drawing on the bridge. You go along the way, look at all the cool stuff. And when you get in the castle, it's kind of like a spiral ramp all the way up with like tiny little stairs. And what's cool about the Castel San Angelo is after King Hadrian was dead and passed after many years, it changed hands as far as ownership. So at one point, the Pope owned that area. It also used to house prisoners, and they used to I think they used to make break rocks with like axes, or they had some stuff there like giant rock pieces, and that was kind of cool. But something you might skip if you didn't know it existed. So I'm glad we got to go in there, and what's really cool is they have so many cool art pieces in there. And you go in these different like throne rooms, art rooms, and there's one room that you saw in the introduction that had all these paintings lined across the wall. There's like golden frames, just wonderful stuff that you only see in like textbooks and in your high school. So it's just like you're just craning your neck looking at all this cool stuff. I would highly recommend to go to Castel San Angelo. And what's really cool is you can get a very cool view of St. Peter's Basilica that's in the Vatican. You got a straight shot down the street, and just a really cool view. And once you get to the top, at one point in Italy, that was actually the tallest building in that area. Definitely no longer the tallest, because it's really not that tall. But when you get to the top, you can actually see quite a bit. And then there's cool architecture. There's sculptures, there's angels, it's just cool stuff. You're just surrounded by everything and just love it. So yeah, highly recommend go to Castel San Angelo as well. Now I'm going to finish off with talking about some landmarks too. We got to see the Trevi Fountain and the Pantheon, and then all the churches that they have around there. The Trevi Fountain, it's a really cool art piece. It's just a giant pool of water. There's lots of sculptures that are up there. I think it's commemorative to Jupiter or Saturn. I can't remember I'm drawing a blank on the gods that it's portraying. But it's just really cool to look at and sit and stare. You can sit. Actually, they don't like you sitting on the edge. But there's a tradition amongst locals and lots of people. They'll take a euro coin or whatever coin, and take it in their right hand and throw it over their left shoulder. Now it's been said that there's about 3,000 euros a day that get thrown into that fountain, and they collect all of it and they actually give it to charity. I think they actually take it and feed people that are in need. So if you're there and you want to help people in need, a great easy way to do that is just take part of the custom and throw that coin in the fountain. So that's pretty cool. And then there's lots of the walk to get there is super cool. You're just walking down these streets with cobblestone and lots of cool shops, outdoor dining, just stuff that you really see in movies. And so you can walk from the Trevi Fountain all the way to the Pantheon through these really cool streets. It's really not that far. The Pantheon is just this temple with really cool pillars. And we didn't get to go on the inside because when we went, it was at nighttime and it was closed. And they have really, really long wait times for the Pantheon sometimes. But inside, it's just this giant dome, giant cement dome, and there's just artwork all around. I saw some pictures. Didn't get to go inside, but at least I got to see the outside of it. And then, along the way, there's actually different churches that they'll allow you to go inside. Can't remember the name of the church that we went into. It's just a really long name. But we were kind of shocked. We're like, people are walking in there. Like, is that a church? Is that a school? So we're like, let's just go in. So we go in there, and this thing is just massive. The ceilings are huge. And it just beats any church that I've ever been to in America. It's just like a landmark. It's like untouchable. I'm like, this is just unreal. There's art pieces on the side. There's sculptures of famous priests that used to be there. It's just almost like a museum of some sorts. It's like a giant nativity scene, the biggest nativity scene I've ever seen in my life. And what I thought was happening, there was a recording of a speech or something like that, like a sermon. We turned the corner and there's a full-on sermon going on, a live session, a church service going on. And we're just kind of like, oh, like, I'm glad I didn't like yell or say anything very loud. They're straight up giving like this service, and anybody can just walk in for the general public. So that's super cool. We got like an authentic experience, and just got to view the priest going to work. So that was awesome. Our adventures in Rome were fantastic. We got to see lots of different things in Italy. 30 days just isn't enough. I wish I had more time. I wish I had more resources. I would have gone to Florence. Didn't get to go to the Vatican. That's another disappointment. There was long lines online to get the tickets. They sell out kind of fast. You have to plan ahead. Just didn't get to go. But maybe that's another thing that we get to go do when we come back to Italy and in the future. So more incentive to come back. But man, it's just, Italy is just an insane country. The culture is cool. The food is cool. The food is delicious. Cannot talk about it enough. But I wanted to dedicate this episode to some tourist traps and just the different things that we did in Italy. Wanted to take you through my experience and how we went about it. And of course, if you need a dentist, we definitely know one that will get you in right away. So that concludes the show. I really appreciate you watching. I know we spent 36 minutes here talking about Italy. What a great episode, and I'm glad that you guys got to tune in and join along. So tune in next time. We are going to be talking about Vienna, Austria, all the different cool things that you can do there. Lots of cool palaces. There's so much to share about Vienna. I really enjoyed it. And we're going to continue our journey. We're going to spend the rest of the weekend in the Czech Republic. Next on the list is Berlin in Germany, which I'm super excited about. Lots of rich history there. But I'm so glad that you joined the program, and we'll catch you next time.